Good evening. Thank you for joining our virtual town hall for the Lake Worth Beach, Lake Clarke Shores, and Palm Springs communities. This meeting is being hosted by the Central and South Regional Offices on behalf of the School District of Palm Beach County and our Superintendent, Dr. Donald Fenoy. Please note that we're recording this meeting so that those who cannot attend can watch it at a later date. I'm Valerie Haynes, Central Region Superintendent. With me tonight, the Central Region Instructional Superintendent for Secondary Schools, Karen Wetzel, Central Region Instructional Superintendents for Elementary Schools, Dr. Jennifer Sanders and Ms. Vivian Green, are joining us virtually. In addition, Dr. Pete Licata will now introduce himself from the South Region and his team.
Good evening, everyone. I know that the South Region reaches up into the central area, and my team is working on the 7 to 8 o'clock one we have also with Lantana, Delray, and Boca. So you just get me tonight, so unfortunately. But I'd like to introduce our board members at this time. I'd like to start with our board vice chair, Mr. Chuck Shaw from District 2.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. It is a pleasure for us to be able to share our thoughts and ask for your opinions and your thoughts on all of the issues that we face here in Palm Beach County related to the opening of school. We know that the last several months has been a difficult time for everybody, and we know that you face those challenges with all of the love and support that you can give to your children. It's important for us now to be in a position that we can move forward and start making the decisions that we as a school district need to make to ensure that your child gets a good education, is safe, is secure in their school, and comfortable with being in the environment that we have. So again, thank you for being with us tonight. We really do appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Now I'd like to introduce board member Erica Whitfield from District 4.
Good afternoon. First of all, Dr. Licata, I wanted to say I love your shirt, one of my high schools, Boynton Beach. Very, very nice choice. Second of all, I want to thank everyone who's participating this evening. I really am so grateful for the opportunity to reach out to our families, and especially for our families to participate and to give us their voices. First of all, your opinion is so valuable to us. This decision that we have in front of us is very difficult, and we really appreciate you making the time to reach out and talk to us and let us know your thoughts. Second of all, I want to say how much we appreciate you trusting us with your children. I hope everyone stays safe during this time, and please share with us either now or later all of the thoughts that you have on the opening of schools. Thank you so much. Please stay safe.
All right, and finally, I'd like to introduce board member Dr. Deborah Robinson from District 7. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, and hello, everyone. I thank you for participating. We have some very tough decisions we have to make, a lot of competing interests, and I want to make sure that we hear your input so that we can factor that into our decision making. So thank you.
So we would like to welcome you as well, parents and community members, to tonight's town hall. This gives you, our stakeholders, another opportunity for us to be able to share with you the ways in which we are preparing for the reopening of schools, and to be able to answer some of your pre-submitted questions. We would also like to take this opportunity to also welcome the city officials participating this evening. With us tonight, we have, from the town of Lake Clarke Shores, Vice Mayor Paul Shalhoub, and Town Manager Dan Clarke. From the City of Lake Worth Beach, Mayor Dan Priolo, as well as Strategic Improvement Project Manager Jessica Savage. From the Village of Palm Springs, Mayor Bev Smith is joining us tonight, as well as Village Mayor Richard Reed.
The purpose of tonight's town hall meeting is to share information with the community by highlighting the ongoing work and review proposed reopening plans for the 2020-2021 school year. These town halls were organized by city and region, not so much by area or regional offices, as many of us regional superintendents, as well as the board members, integrate into different areas and different regions of our county. Last night, many of us participated in the town halls facilitated in their native language of Spanish, Hmong, Haitian Creole, and Portuguese. These are also meant to complement the other ways we've been reaching out and collected feedback from various community groups, such as parents and employee surveys. Events are open to all community members, but town halls are being recorded. So these are all recorded if you are unable to attend this evening or be able to go back to it and review the information. Our agenda tonight is as follows. We will spend some time sharing our ongoing work in the district as well as reviewing initial reopening options. Please note that our preparation for the work is for the new normal of the school centers and quickly evolving based on the latest information provided by the CDC, Department of Education, Florida Department of Health, and our district health advisory committee. Also, committee members were encouraged to submit questions in advance. We'd like to thank you for participating in the asking great questions and also providing additional input. We are recording all your questions in the regional offices. Keep that in mind, and there are literally thousands right now, and we will address some of those later. Not hundreds, but thousands now. We'll be answering them, and we've also put them in thematic organization because many of them are the same questions. So we'll get to that. As time permits, we will be doing a question and answering period.
So during the first half of this town hall, we will highlight district-wide efforts that have been ongoing since schools closed in mid-March due to COVID-19. This includes work related to summer learning opportunities, professional development and support systems that we've placed in areas needed, and also addressing the internet access. So we're going to first start talking about summer learning. This summer, we provided learning opportunities that was provided by our district virtually. Students with individualized educational plans, as well as English language learners, are being offered the opportunity to continue their learning this summer. I'm thrilled to note that approximately 6,500 students are currently enrolled in participating in virtual learning 4 days per week. Our talented teachers are also offering credit and course recovery options, as well as enrichment programs for English language learners and also migrant students. We're also offering a targeted intervention program for select students. Each elementary school was allocated teachers to work virtually with students that are below grade level in small groups, targeting specific deficiencies in literacy and mathematics. About $1 million were allocated to our schools to provide this great opportunity for students to catch up for missed instruction, especially for students that are significantly behind. In addition, all students have the option to take part in self-paced virtual activities outlined as part of our Summer Learning Essentials website, which was launched earlier this month. These activities provided an additional opportunity for students to sharpen their skills or master standards in preparation for the next grade level. Activities include virtual field trips and other interactive opportunities to keep learning alive during the summer months. And it also gives our students an opportunity to try and catch up for lost time during the last trimester or last 9 weeks. The district also recently approved summer leases for a small number of community-based organizations, such as the Boys and Girls Club and For My Children, to name a few, to host face-to-face summer camps in selected school buildings. So here's a screenshot of the Summer Learning Essentials website. If you click on the top where it says Summer Learning Essentials, you will be able to access virtual libraries in collaboration with our public libraries in our communities, as well as virtual learning experiences and field trips, targeting different intervention resources by grade level and also subject area. And again, this is self-paced. The address is listed at the bottom of the slide, but you can also tour our homepage at our school district website, which is palmbeachschools.org, to access resources that support continuous learning over the summer. One of the other areas too that we've been focused this summer in preparation for reopening is around professional development and the supports provided to our faculty and staff. The district has offered numerous professional development opportunities and support for students and staff in response to COVID-19. Schools and regional office received ongoing feedback regarding distance learning during school closures. Some students and parents had a great experience, while others not so much. We listened to your feedback and moved quickly to develop as a district professional development opportunities for teachers to grow and calibrate this summer, including topics such as effective distance learning implementation, reaching unengaged students, to name a few, as well as CDC cleanliness protocols. Also, mental health supports for students are ongoing despite school closures, using the telehealth services either through phone or online. During the closure, I'm happy to note that hundreds of students continue to participate in counseling sessions. We know how difficult it is right now with the way that we have experienced most recently with social injustice, as well as students just being away from their peers and being at home for an extended amount of time. Our district also hosted 2 summer institutes recently that were open to all members of the community, including teachers and administrators. 2 of those are, one of them is Hispanic Latino Studies and also African American, and Caribbean Studies.
So we're not going to get into some of the other things that we've been doing. And as a school district, our job is to pursue equity in every sense of the word every day of our employment. It's something that makes our community better, it makes our schools better. The digital divide is an important piece of what we've experienced recently. It's important to note that digital divide goes beyond distance learning and education. Without internet access, households are limited in so many ways. And now they should be able to interact with their healthcare professional, government officials, and communities, not just with education. Without any kind of access to Wi-Fi or that type to hook in a laptop, a lot of our students are at disadvantage, and we realize that. Palm Beach County was one of the ones that turned fastest and was able to provide some significant and phenomenal curriculum opportunities. Our curriculum department was perfect. They were phenomenal, but we realized we have to do more. We need to do more, especially when we realized that a lot of our students were not having access to Wi-Fi. When we transitioned in mid-March, we knew that not every student would have access. So we started going out. Our principals and teachers made every effort to connect with every student without the ability to connect. In Google Meets, Google Classroom, thinking outside the box, they found creative ways to provide instruction using telephone or partnering with the local business organizations, including our television stations, to assist with distributing resources to our most vulnerable students. We also know that there's going to be a need for a plan B. There are other catastrophes that could happen, such as a hurricane that would put us in a place where we can't return to our schools, as well as this continued effort. As we know that in the last few days, we've had a spike. We are keeping our eye on that. And obviously, as a school district of 187,000 students or 195,000 students start, we really have to be ahead of the game. We know that it'll be a prolonged school enclosures if we have another catastrophe, and we have to have all students engaged. If you look at that circle in the middle, the connectivity branches out to so many different things other than education, but our concern is education. But think about the telemedicine piece and the mental behavioral health services that we're going to get to a little bit later, because that is also a concern and a lot of the questions that came up as we'll talk about later. District is excited to partner with other entities and finally address the need for internet access for all communities. District made an effort for COVID-19 pandemic to make sure we bridge that digital divide. We're trying to reach out into the communities that really have a loss of Wi-Fi or not being able to access it. We've worked with several of our agencies out there that are able to provide that. We also did a survey where we were able to pinpoint zip codes that had hotspots or no hotspots. Over the last several weeks, district staff has been engaging key stakeholders in making sure we can access this project. Palm Beach County has also set aside $10 million in federal CARES Act money that was granted for what we're calling digital inclusion projects. The $10 million will be by the Palm Beach County Commission will go towards things like build out of infrastructure, pole attachments, agreements with FP&L, and covering one-time and reoccurring costs. Once again, without digital access for many of our students, we are increasing the gap, and that is not our objective. We struggle and we strive for equity all the day long. Finally, you'll hear some short-term and long-term strategies that we're trying to undertake to connect families. Some hotspots we're putting in, internet sponsorships, fundraisers for Wi-Fi extenders. We're also trying long-term those Wi-Fi extenders, as well as internet sponsorships that will include long-term grants as such. Partnerships with municipalities. Subsidized housing participants will also have internet access as we go through that, as we've identified. Connected families to free and subsidized offers also are on the table. District securing funds to purchase more hotspots and internet sponsorships for the needy families. Given the geographic focus for tonight's town hall, I wanted to highlight the city of Lake Worth Beach and Palm Springs. District staff have been working closely with officials to address the digital divide in this specific area and whose families reside in these areas. Okay, now let's transition to district's initial openings or options for reopening. Reimagining schools, the reopening task force. Let's go over the timeline and review what we did. Just for context, the district began monitoring responding to the COVID-19 pandemic as early as January 2020. The district closed schools in mid-March as per guidance from the Florida Department of Education and the state of Florida. These events were similar to what we saw happening across the United States and the world. Now the April through June timeline. The district is currently reimagining the reopening of schools based on feedback collected during parent and employee surveys. These were the surveys that were sent out last week. We're also using the data we're receiving right now and some of the questions that we have. The employee surveys are out, and we are getting the return for those as well. These virtual town halls will add to that. Remember, we are trying to get as much data as possible. This decision is so monumental, and it changes daily. I like to refer back to what our superintendent says. This is a red light, green light time. We're ready to go on a green light, and immediately we have to do a red light and stop. We are working as best as possible to make sure that we are as educated and have as much input as possible to make sure we make the right decision as we move forward. Our board is working very hard, and their meeting today was a long discussion about how we can come back. I also want to take a moment to flag upcoming dates where the community can learn more about reopening plans.
So as Dr. Licata mentioned before, our superintendent, Dr. Donald Fenoy, created a reopening task force to support decision-making around the reopening of schools for the 2020-21 school year. The reopening task force, or also known as RTF, is comprised of key district staff, including principals, assistant principals, teachers from operations, members from the operational team, human resources, to name a few. The RTF proposes considerations, implications, and possibilities for reopening options to the superintendent, his executive team, and the school board. Some of the options that they're taking into account include an emphasis on safety and security of all students and staff, prioritizing an equitable environment for all students, and ensuring high quality instruction, but also having the adaptability for sudden closures. Just like Dr. Licata indicated, that we need to do the green light, red light, be able to open and close and move fluid through the year. It is important to note the superintendent also created a health advisory committee, since the expertise of local health officials is absolutely critical during the decision-making process. The RTF is proposed of 3 possible reopening options. And those are the 3, you'll see them on the screen, the 3 possible options that has already been discussed in the past. As the first option is around returning to school full-time, returning face-to-face instruction at school campuses. The second option is a blended model, which combines face-to-face instruction and distance learning. And the third option is distance learning exclusively. So if you look at this chart, on the left-hand side, you're looking at the first option, which is the full-time in school, which means we're back to in-person teaching, but prepared to go virtual if needed. And one of the reasons why we would go virtual is in the event that there is a spike of cases of COVID-19 at any particular school or class, or it could also be another event, such as a hurricane. Teachers continue to incorporate technology, and that's going to be a big piece, because the one thing that we did learn is that our teachers really learned quite a bit and grew as far as their skills in technology, and now we're able to capitalize on that strength, on that growth from many of our teachers. Under the blended model, Some days are in person, some days virtual. Google Classroom will continue to be utilized. Teachers flip instruction using Google Classroom and our pre-recorded content, and also equitable access to face-to-face instruction. And under distance learning, so it's pretty much what we experienced at the end of this past school year, utilizing Google Classroom and Google Meet daily, but also focus on quality instruction. And part of the conversation we had earlier today, or part of the presentation, is around the robust, the expectation of what distance learning would look like if we continue moving forward with that. And the growth that we are continuing to provide our teachers and calibration to be able to have effective and robust distance learning. To wrap up the conversation on reopening school options, we wanted to share 2 quick videos on the district's ongoing efforts to keep students and staff safe during these challenging times. The first video shows the work being done at the school centers to prepare for reopening. And the second video shows the measures our district is taking on the school buses to keep them clean and disinfected. So stay tuned to the 2 videos. Before we move into the Q&A portion of tonight's town hall, I just want to remind you about our summer feeding sites. We know that food insecurity remains a big challenge in some of our Palm Beach County communities. So I want to make sure that we take a moment to remind you about our summer feeding sites. To date, over 3 million meals have been distributed since schools closed in mid-March. Meal distribution will continue into the summer at the 52 school locations across Palm Beach County. Distribution takes place from 9 a.m. until noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So please visit our webpage dedicated to the summer feeding for more information in case you need to know the locations. Now we're going to move to the portion of our town hall, which is basically questions and answers that you were able to pre-submit. So community members were encouraged to submit many questions in advance, and I want to thank you in advance for the great questions being asked, some of which we may have answers to, and some of which are unknown at this time, and we will be quite candid and honest about that. We will now answer the pre-submitted questions as time permits, and if by any chance there are questions that we do not get to, the regional offices will be reaching out to you via email or phone call to touch base with you and hopefully answer your questions. So as Dr. Licata had indicated at the front part of the presentation, is that there were some thematics, some questions that were asked multiple times. And so since we received hundreds of those questions in anticipation for tonight, we organized them into larger themes. In the interest of time, as we definitely want to cover as many of your questions as possible. So please note that we will pass along all the feedback to the Reopening Task Force, also known as the RTF. Also, it's important to bring attention to the fact that the answers shared during this evening's town hall are based on information according to what we know today. Things have changed rapidly over the past several weeks since schools initially closed in mid-March. And we fully expect the situation to remain fluid for the foreseeable future. The last thing I want to share on this topic is that there are many there may be some reopening options that the district cannot operationalize due to constraints related to budget or staffing needs. For example, We may not be able to run multiple routes and school buses throughout a given day to accommodate social distancing guidelines. Doing so could prove to be cost prohibitive. And the district is expected to have limited resources due to expected budget cuts caused by the COVID-19 economic crisis. Now, we're going to be diving into some of those pre-submitted questions. The first theme was really around, the questions were related basically to health-related data, or how current COVID-19 data is being used to inform district decision-making. So the superintendent created a health advisory committee composed of local and state medical and health professionals to provide feedback on the best practices related to the CDC guidelines. Their expertise will guide final decisions related to the reopening of schools. And they will continue to advise the superintendent after the 2020-21 school year begins. This way, we can ensure that we are looking at the data in real time when making decisions concerning district-operated schools in Palm Beach County. The second mostly asked question was about recent parent guardian survey. It was on reopening schools that are school district conducted. So the feedback that we received, as well as the feedback collected from the district employee service and this week's virtual town halls, will be used to inform those decisions related to the final reopening plans. But I also want to remind you that we will be sharing those findings from all those surveys at the upcoming board workshop on July 1st. It is also important to note that recommendations from the health and medical professionals, as well as guidance from the Florida Department of Education, the governor, and the U.S. Department of Education, has been and will continue to be a factor into the district's decision on reopening schools. The important takeaway is that the safety and the well-being of our students and staff continue to be our top priority for this work.
Thank you, Val. Theme 3, with a very common theme amongst the questions to the regional offices, was related to distance learning and any anticipated changes for the next school year. As we mentioned earlier, there will be some form of that as we move forward. We also know that professionally we have to develop our teachers in a better way and also be able to administer, again, the mental health side of it, the learning disabilities or the learning styles, as well as our English language learners who really are familiar with and benefit from face-to-face instruction. So as mentioned earlier, we talked about it. And on distance learning, as well as strategies for working with unengaged learners, among other important topics. We will continue to provide ongoing PD and other supports to help instructional staff build skills in the area of distance learning. If it is determined that schools can reopen based on a combination of multiple factors, or if we know a serious outbreak of COVID-19 could happen again at any time in any part of our community, which would require a quick transition back to distance learning, we must be ready to stop and go anytime during the school year. The district is taking necessary steps over the summer to clarify expectations as it relates to distance learning, since we recognize student learning experiences varied in some cases from classroom to classroom. That was one of the biggest things we saw, that classrooms look differently and so differently. And as educational administrators, it was one of the ones that concerned us quickly and the most. We also know that beyond PD, our academics team is working diligently to produce high quality and instructional materials that teachers can use for distance learning purposes. Having these materials will help standardize student learning experience as much as possible, while simultaneously setting a higher bar for instruction. One of the other major themes that we had to do with the start of the school year, and this is very difficult because we have to follow in accordance with what the governor says, but our school board also had a long discussion about it tonight, about the practicality of when we should open. Several questions have focused around the timeline for opening schools, including Sylvia and Enrique, who's hopefully watching tonight, and they sent in that for now, we are planning for school to resume as scheduled on August 10th for all students. However, the district has not yet determined what will it look like for students. We have been asking for parent and community input. The district also has a task force that has been working on the options that were presented tonight. The decision regarding school opening and the options for parents and students will be made on July 15th.
All right, so at this point, we're going to go into other questions that were more single questions that didn't really fit into those themes. So, all right, Dr. Licata, let's start with the first one. This question came from Laura. And her question is, what is the protocol if a child comes to school sick?
That was a very popular one, and I think many of us are concerned about it. Not just our own children, but the children that are in the classroom that come sick. Well, the School District of Palm Beach County partners with the Florida Department of Health, the Palm Beach County Health Department, 2 other entities. This team is currently working to develop the appropriate protocols for when a student or staff member is determined to be on campus and positive with the coronavirus. The details of this plan have not yet been released, but I want to assure you that there is a team of health experts working on this. Please know we are still working through the details related to implementing social distance guidelines and what a physical return will look like on the campuses. So when I say that answer, I know we're working with several entities. We don't have it in print yet, but they are the professionals. We want to make sure that everyone is safe while we go through this.
Another question that came from Andrew, and then Steve had a follow-up to that question. And the question, Dr. Licata, is, will all students in elementary school be required to wear a mask during school hours? That seems to be quite of a popular one. And then Steve had a follow-up question with that was similar to it. Will schools be providing masks for each of the students that do not have one?
So let me start with the easy part of that. No decision has been made. I know the Palm Beach County Commission came out with what they want for folks in public. We are not absolutely having to follow them, but we use them as a guide. And speaking with leadership tonight, we realize that this is a hot topic. It is one of the more popular questions, but we don't have that decision right now. We do know that it does reduce the amount of transmission. And right now with these spikes, it's a consideration. But again, we do not have that answer. We will not make a determination until we have all the facts. And we work with the previous 2 groups that we spoke about in the last question. We're hoping to have that decision before or on July 15th when the board meets again, or there's a decision to be made. All right, I'm going to ask the questions now, Val, because I got the answer.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Licata.
I hope you're out there because you sent this question in twice. Will there be temperature checks before entering the campus this year?
Well, that has not been determined. Again, we are working very closely with the Florida Department of Health as well as the superintendent's health advisory board on this. However, when we're looking at number of students on a campus, if you think about John L. Leonard, which is in this region, you're looking at almost 4,000 students. And is it feasible to be able to take temperature of 4,000 students coming in and out? So some of it is logistics, whether it's even able to be done, but those decisions have not been made thus far.
And I'd like to add to that. We both have been principals in our history of some large schools, and the hallways, they're very tight and they're very crowded. And we have to keep thinking about these pieces of part of the operation and the logistics of our schools when you have that many students on campus. We would love to see every single face back on our campus and return to normal, but we know that that's quite the haul from now, and we're going to try and do everything we can to get there. So Laura, hopefully you're on tonight. Will parents have the option to send their elementary students to campus full-time?
Well, as part of the presentation tonight, we reviewed the 3 options, and that is one of the options that a possibility as one of the 3, where the students return full-time on campus. But of course, we are really dependent on the situation at that time, whether we are able to come back on campus, depending on where we are with the COVID-19 spikes, and we will continue to seek guidance from all of the entities that will be able to give us the very best case scenario as we make that decision moving forward.
Thank you. That's a tough one. Again, They're all tough. None of them are easy. Okay, Alba has a question, and she wants to know, how are the students to receive their ESE, IEP, or any special teaching method? My child has several teachers that help her with education like reading comprehension and speech. She can't get this from hybrid or virtual schooling. Great question.
We appreciate your feedback on that. And I want to reassure you that we are developing plans that address the needs of our ESC students. Our Director of Exceptional Student Education and his team are following the recommendations from the Department of Education and sharing this information with their school-based ESC contacts. We will make sure that we continue to provide individualized support for students. And there's a follow-up, right, from Laura about the one-to-one therapy. Again, we're doing the very best that we can to be able to provide the therapy. I know that there was some that was done virtually, but we certainly do understand the need for some of these therapies to be, to happen face to face.
All right, your turn to ask some questions.
All right. So, this is a great question from Jessica. Jessica's asking, will there be standardized testing for the 2020-2021 school year? So what is the state telling us on that?
So that's a great question, because that's what a lot of our performance measures are on. Yes, there will be, the state has indicated there will be testing for the next year. We're not exactly sure what it's going to look like. We're anticipating that we will have some measurable baselines and goals for our students, but right now that specific testing is not available. Val, do you have anything else to add to that?
The state's going to have to make the final decision. I certainly don't. It's not going to be up to any one of the districts in Florida. So as far as we know today, the state is expecting for students to take an assessment in the next school year, the upcoming school year. So here's a great question from Alba. Hope she's listening out there. For students that depend on school buses, see, this is a tricky one, Dr. Licata. For students that depend on school buses to get to school and home, how will this be handled?
So we mentioned earlier before about the transportation routes. You saw in the video that we were able to disinfect, clean all the buses. That is an incredible task. Our folks came to work, our staff came to work to make sure that is there. Remember, the CDC guideline says that 6 feet apart. A bus, if you've ever been on a school bus before, that's always a great experience. They're tight. And when you have 50, 60 kids on a bus, it's very difficult for us to have the proper spacing. And remember, they will have to be cleaned consistently, and managing the students as well. These students, on a side note, socially, our children are not in school right now, and that is a huge aspect of what schooling is. And some of the questions we're going to get to in a little bit sort of touch on that, but reality is when students are on bus, that's some of the best growing time to create some of your best friends and talk about what you did and just the interaction of what children are supposed to do. Unfortunately, we can't pack them in the buses like we used to, and it's going to be a challenge, and it's not going to be cheap. And like we said earlier in the presentation, having multiple routes with different amounts of students on is going to be difficult. So this may look a lot different. We will do everything we can to be safe, but in the end, transportation is certainly a challenge, and our chief operating officer has been working night and day, and certainly working with other districts around the state and around the country. We are the 10th largest, and there's 9 other ones that are largest, 2 to the south of us, and our superintendent has been in contact with them almost daily, speaking to those superintendents on how to do this. Together with a lot of great minds, we can come up with the right answers, but sometimes we're restricted on doing all the things we want to do. Angel, we're going to yank this one out because I think it's important, because I got a couple calls on this today. Mrs. Logan, if you see where Angel is, where they asked about
I see Angel's question. Okay, go ahead and ask.
Sports and activities such as football, cheer, band, etc. When will the decision be made, and when will students be allowed to be on property to train?
Okay, what I can say is that our district's manager of athletics is working closely with the Florida High School Athletic Association, and she is also a member of the reopening task force. So it is something that they are certainly looking at closely. As soon as the new provisions and protocols are available, the plan will move forward and it will be shared. I do know that we are in the planning phases of starting those workouts outside. by looking at the CDC guidelines and making sure that that is being followed. But again, with the recent changes, with a spike of cases here in Palm Beach County, you make the best plans, and then we have to be fluid. We have to be flexible and change as needed. So I know that the district is planning to move forward, but it will be absolutely dependent on where we are as a county and as a state in regards to the COVID cases.
Okay, I'm going to go up a couple questions because this came in as well often from Joe and Alcide. It's about fine arts and social distancing. Joe asked, thoughts on social distancing and band classes or concerts? And the other part of that question is, what will fine arts look like this fall? Do you want to attach? Do you see where they are?
All right. Yes. So the safety of our students and staff is of utmost importance. That is absolutely the most important piece. The district will continue to seek guidance, again, from the Health Advisory Committee and the CDC, and we will do everything possible as best as we can to provide social distancing. I know that the governor's plan that was delivered a few weeks ago actually talked about social distancing and the expectations, and knowing that in some of our buildings, especially our older buildings, the size itself of the classroom is quite small. So the districts are being asked to do the very best possible to make sure that we are following as much as we can the social distancing to protect our students and protect our staff. Now, as far as fine arts, moving forward with that, it is certainly part of the plan that fine arts is going to be, in session. What it looks like, again, it's looking at the reopening task force and providing their guidance. But in fine arts, when you're looking at the elementary school, it typically is an art class with typically, not always, but the same or similar class size to a regular class. So it will depend on the number of students and parents and their comfort level of who will be coming back full-time face-to-face, or who will decide to use a different option of education for their children, whether it's option 2 with the blended, if that moves forward, or option 3 with the distance learning.
I want to add to that. As you know, football is a very important part, and so is band. As a high school principal, those were two main activities that started midway through the summer. We not only are educational administrators in charge of large regions and schools, we're also parents or grandparents of children that go to our schools. Valerie, you have 2, and I have a grandchild. Yes, I'm that old. I have a grandchild who's just coming in through the system, and he loves going to school every day. We are also parents in this, or grandparents in this. So it's personal for us as well. So we are involved in it from this level, but when we leave here, we're also involved in it at the same level as you are, about what's best for our children and how can we make sure everything is safe. But I do know that the band works as hard as the football team, if not more. And that is a big, big event every year. And we just want to make sure that when they go back, if and when, it's safe. It's just safe, because that is another, again, I'm going to go back to the social parts of being in school. It's really important for us as human beings to be around our friends. And that's where so many great relationships, lifelong friendships are created during sports and the arts. So this one hits us closely because we are parents and grandparents of kids that are participating in that. Anything else on that one, Del?
No, but Larissa has a great question about, and we also have to keep in mind that some of our own teachers and staff members are tuning in tonight. And this question comes from Larissa. Hope you're out there listening. What specific steps will be taken to protect the adults who work on school campuses? Do you see that?
No, you're going to have to go with that one.
All right. Okay, so for that one, the Division of Facilities Management team is working very closely with our environmental services to ensure that the current CDC guidelines are being followed to the best of our ability. But I do want to say that we currently already have district protocols for employees that are already reporting to school sites. We already have our administrators, our principals, and our custodians are currently working at the school centers, and we have all been trained in regards to the expectations of social distancing and employee protocols. So we already have that in place. And as things change, and we will make adjustments as needed. I wanted to make sure we touch base on that.
Right.
Dr. Nakata, what about that question from Allison, explaining about the this one is
Yes.
talking about AP, IB, and the ACE and dual enrollment classes.
Yeah.
How will it be graded this year?
So this is a tough one because we're regulated by the College Board or Cambridge. The College Board is obviously AP, IB, International Baccalaureate, a separate entity, and ACE, which is Cambridge, is a separate entity. And they have not made any decisions moving forward. They quickly pivoted this year at the end for your high schoolers, and were able to provide testing environments and tests for that. But they have not come out with official information. We're expecting to hear from our curriculum department, our assistant superintendent, Diane Fetterman, shortly, because they are all in contact. They realize that Palm Beach County is a large county and also celebrates some incredible success on these tests. We lead the state for a lot of these categories, and we want to stay that way. So it's a big chunk of change. It's also a big success story, but more importantly, it's where a lot of our students get their college credits before they leave. So that is a phenomenal question, Allison, and I appreciate it. How about Mavis? There's a question up here. I can't imagine the gravity of the position you're in and the decisions you have to make. Well, thank you for recognizing that, but that's what we chose to do in our life, and we enjoyed it. We love it. We love our work. I've known Val for how many years now? 20 years. I think you were the principal of my youngest daughter at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Freedom Shores back in the day.
Yes, yes. And she's still friends with all her classmates, lifelong friends, as I was saying. You're not going to make everyone happy, says Mavis. We know that. But I ask you to please consider long-term mental effects of these last few months have had on these kids. I'm going to add, and the parents as well.
Right.
we know what you've been going through as well. But will you take that one, Val?
I will. That's a great question, Dr. Nakata. And thank you, Mavis, for bringing up such an important point. Our district has an entire department dedicated to behavioral and mental health. Programs related or regarding social emotional learning are being offered in our schools, as well as each school having a full-time behavioral mental health counselor. And that was thanks to the referendum that passed. And thank you for that support also. But as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we've had hundreds and hundreds of students that we know need emotional assistance and support, and they have continued to be able to reach out to our therapists as well as our counselors to be able to still provide or get their support even though they are home during school closure. So and we will continue to provide that. One of the things that, and Dr. Nakata and myself, when we meet with our principals, one of the things that I know that we have already indicated, right, and made it a priority is that when we're planning for reopening at a school level, we're planning for not just opening the doors, we really have to plan for the social emotional learning of students as they come back and get reacquainted back to a school setting. We have to plan for just being able to come back and follow the social distancing and the expectations, being able to feel safe back at school again. So there is a lot of work that we still need to do ahead, but we've started the movement. So we look forward to continuing that work. We know our students and our parents, like you mentioned, Dr. Nakata, have gone through a lot. Staff members too, teachers, etc. We have all gone through a lot, and we need to lean on each other, and we need to make sure that we are there for each other to move forward through this very difficult time.
So I believe April asked a great question about hybrid schedule and aftercare. That was a popular one in the South region. How about up in the central area where many of your schools are? Yeah,
the same. We're currently discussing the aftercare models. Of course, it's all dependent on the options that the parents select or that we are able to offer as far as reopening of schools. But aftercare programming will continue to move forward, and how it would look, it's all going to depend on which options our school district is going to include in our plans for reopening. Dr. Nakata, I think we're at the end of our questions for now. It's 5:50, and I know we need to do our closeout.
All right, and I will go ahead and close it out. I want to make sure that everyone understands and as one of the questions we received was the gravity we have. this is a very difficult position. And I'll take it over from here because I know you have to run to the next one, which is in the West Palm area, which you covered.
Yes.
I will finish. Thank you very much. It's great to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me tonight and making sure that our communities here in the Central region, as well as we share some from the South as well. I want to also thank our board members for participating tonight and our city officials that joined us today. And don't forget, reach out to the Central Region office should you have any other questions, and then we will do the very best to answer those. So for tonight, I'll see you later, and Dr. Licata will finish it out.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone who was here tonight. I know we answered just, probably 15, 20 questions, and we also talked about the major themes. We are in a tough spot, but we are in position to make the very, very best decision. If you have thought of something that hasn't been touched on tonight, you're welcome to look at the next ones, or just send your questions into the email. We're full-time running with all these questions and trying to answer because they are important, because we can't think of everything. And again, parents have a different perspective. The community has a different perspective. We want to be as safe as possible, but we want our kids back. You want your kids back with us. And that's from the heart, because we got into this business because of children, and we miss them. We miss our teachers, we miss our principals, and we miss our children more than anything in the events. So I thank you. Please have some patience. Stay in touch with us. You're always welcome to call. Email is always the best. Keep an eye on the board meetings. Our board is working extra hard for this. They really, really are working together on this if you watched the meeting today. But please, please, please stay in tune, stay in touch, stay safe, stay healthy. And I look forward to hearing and seeing from some of you real soon when eventually we do get back somehow, some way. So everyone have a great night. Does any of the board members that are still on, I just see one left. Anyone else want to say anything? Mr. Shaw or Dr. Robinson, anyone else? Because they're jumping on to the next one as well. I think we're good. Hey, everyone, have a great night. And remember, this is about you guys too. You are our community. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Have a great night.